Evening to one and all, and welcome to the executive meeting on the 27th of January. Present are myself, John Horsall, who's the leader of the council, John Kaiser, who's deputy leader of the council, Parry Bath, environment, the executive member for the environment and leisure. Pauline Jorgensen, executive member for highways and transport. Charles Margetts, the executive member for health, wellbeing and adult services. Stuart Munro, the executive member for business and economic development. Gregor Murray, the executive member for residence services, communications and emissions. Wayne Smith, the executive member for planning and enforcement, and Bill Soane, the executive member for neighbourhoods and communities. I have apologies for Graham Howe, the executive member for children's services. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Trying to find his notes. Please ensure that any mobile devices or mobile phones are switched off. If you are participating via Teams when you're not speaking or being asked to speak, please mute your microphone. If you do not mute your microphone, it will be muted for you. To assist people viewing the meeting, could everybody participating via Teams turn off their cameras and only turn them on when speaking, and also do introduce yourselves when you speak. Please note that to avoid the chat function on Teams being used inappropriately has been disabled. Please also note that the meeting is currently being webcast live. Also in attendance is Susan, I should say our Susan Parsonage, the Chief Executive of Woking Borough, Anne Hunter and Callum Wernham from Democratic Services. Thank you very much. May I propose the minutes of the last meeting?
I'll second them.
Yeah. Everybody happy?
I'll second them.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. I'm a non-executive director of Optilis Holdings Limited for the time being.
So am I.
I'm also a director of Optalis.
And we will leave the room for the item on the Optilis contract. So thank you very much for attending. Just a few words before we start. I wanted to make it clear that all this administration, my party and I, are completely opposed to the loss of every blade of grass, tree, shrub, field or green space in the borough. Once it's gone forever. The verdict of the borough is enough. Consultation was also clear that the residents of the borough agree with our stance. I've lived in the borough for the best part of 60 years. I remember how the rural district of Woking was. Nevertheless, we are not an independent island. We must follow government mandates which require us to make provision for a government-determined number of houses. All mainstream political parties have within their manifestos a commitment to build a huge number of houses. The current government objective is amongst the lowest of the three national parties. We have the option to do nothing, which would mean that we have no plan and therefore no defence against speculative development. There is not a square inch of the borough which has not been optioned by a developer who would seek to exercise that option by claiming that we have no plan or 5-year land supply. The developer would be successful in his application. I have no doubt that we would be faced with housing numbers several times those currently mandated. This is the option that the Lib Dem South Oxfordshire took, with the result, I understand, of many, many more houses and the original plan reimposed. The current consultation for the local plan update has now closed. There are at least 2 more opportunities for residents to make their views known. I have been very pleased to see a very good level of response. I was delighted to see many of my colleagues making strong representations for their wards. It was disappointing that other councillors confined themselves to making futile political points about housing numbers. As I've said, all mainstream political parties within their manifestos have a commitment to build a huge number of houses, for which the current government's objective is amongst the lowest. I have worked hard and successfully to ensure that our housing numbers were reduced from 1635 to the current 789, and campaigned successfully, initially alone with the support of John Redwood and Theresa May, to oppose the planned changes to national planning policies. Notwithstanding the consultation, I will continue to press government to make more changes and encourage our MPs, who are all critical of the housing numbers and planning policies, to join me in so doing. As the council and government are of the same party, there is leverage that can be applied. I have written to the minister and have received an acknowledgement. I'm awaiting a meeting date. I have been successful in the past and hope to be so in the future. Last time we as an executive met, the new Omicron variant was just known in Woking. It has then since dominated our thoughts. The rate of new COVID cases reached a high of just over 1,600 per 100,000 at the beginning of January. COVID led to many families having to change their plans over the festive period. The new year started with a welcome decline in rates, although with schools turning and the high transmissibility of the Omicron variant in an unvaccinated in primary settings and therefore susceptible population, this decline has been short-lived. Rates are now back on the rise and are currently just over 1,350 per 100,000. The current rate reflects the week 13 to 19 January. We expect this to rise further as daily case numbers continue to increase. Like the situation at the end of the autumn term, most cases are now within our school-age population and their parents. The past month has seen and continues to see a flurry of new and changed guidance for us to follow. This is sometimes hard to keep pace with. Officers are working relentlessly to translate new guidance for our residents through the Community Champion newsletter, via our website and other channels, and supporting our partners and providers working with care settings and educational settings as they navigate the complexity of the new situation. There was an urgent national Omicron appeal for the public to get boosted now, leading up to the end of 2021. And we've been working tirelessly to support health partners on the delivery of the new vaccination programme across the borough. 67% of residents over the age of 12 have now received their booster vaccine, and we continue to work with our healthcare colleagues to ensure that the vaccine offer reaches all our residents across the borough. With this backdrop of rising rates and pressure on services, the government's Plan B is being lifted from today. Whilst this removes the mandate to work from home and wear masks indoors, we continue to encourage the residents to take precautions where there is a risk of COVID transmission. We call upon all our residents and partners to be as patient as they can, as services are operating under significant staffing pressure. With one eye on the spring, there will continue to be much change over the coming weeks, whilst case rates remain high and rising. We must remain cautious and continue to employ all the measures we can to keep our communities as safe as possible and reduce transmission as much as we can. And lastly, on that topic, please continue to encourage everyone to be vaccinated with the 3 jabs. On a happier note, for the last 6 months, an organisation called Climate Emergency has been undertaking a benchmarking exercise of all local authority climate emergency action plan, scored against 200 criteria. The results were announced today, and I'm very pleased to say that Woking ranked 8 out of 180 single-tier authorities across the United Kingdom. And I offer my congratulations to Gregor Murray, the executive member who's pushed this forward. We are approaching that time of the year when we present our medium-term budget proposals to full council. We do this acutely aware of our objectives and responsibilities as the most vulnerable in the community. Last week, we agreed to a council tax reduction scheme proving over 4 million worth of support to those facing financial hardship. This support sits amongst a whole range of measures we provide to those in need of financial assistance. John Kaiser will expand on this later in the meeting. They're also making great strides in the provision of affordable and social housing in the borough, much needed, particularly amongst our younger adults. The Gorse Ride project being considered in the executive next month is a testament to that. Although we will continue to do what we can for our vulnerable, we must do this within our overall financial context of the council. The Chief Financial Officer's statutory draft report sets this out clearly and alerts us to unprecedented times in terms of financial risk and uncertainty. We have the impact of rising inflation, particularly alarming in the procurement of gas and electricity, with potential increase of over 80%. We have the ongoing implementation of the adult social care reform, for which we have calculated the full impact to be well over 20 million to the budget, to the council. We have the uncertainty of the local government funding system to determine our future government funding. This takes place under a national levelling up agenda, so it is unlikely to go well for Woking. In addition to which, we have a host of other financial pressures yet to reveal themselves, such as the true cost of COVID-19 and the outcome of the consultation on the minimum revenue provision, which could increase the cost of debt falling on our general fund. So, to quote Donald Rumsfeld, as we know, there are known unknowns. There are things we know. There are also things, there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. I would be inclined to go further than this and suggest our financial future also includes a degree of unknown unknowns. That is to say, there are things we will not yet have been aware of. It is in this context we must formulate our budget proposals and move forward with great caution through the following years. We passionately believe in helping those most in need in our community, but can only do this by maintaining our strong financial resilience in the most precarious of circumstances. As my good friend and colleague John Kaiser often says, a council which is broke is no good to anyone. Thank you. Now we come to public question time. And there are no public questions, I believe. So members' question time. Gary, are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, hello. Happy New Year to you, Gary.
Oh, you're welcome. And John, you nearly brought tears to my eyes with that introduction. Thank you. Anyway, I'll get on with my question. Approximately 8 months ago, supported by a big fanfare of publicity, Councillor Wayne Smith introduced a carbon capture plan, thanks to a £300,000 contribution from the Woodland Trust and an injection of £350,000 of council capital borrowing. The plan requires 250 hectares of green open space, and phase one was to set up a project team, including a paid manager, develop a tree strategy, work with landowners, parish and town councils. Since the scheme's inception, in which there seems to be no plans for replacement trees that die, no real update and progress in any of the plan's initial intention, yet at the same time the council's own planning department continues to recommend the removal of TPO trees to facilitate development. My question is simply, how many of the 250,000 trees have actually been planted or agreements made to plant to date? Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. As you're aware, through updates provided at the Trees and Biodiversity Task and Finish Group, of which you're a member, a project manager to lead the delivery of the 250,000 tree planting project and tree strategy was recruited in September last year, and in the 4 months since they arrived, they've been working to deliver phase one of the business plan. A project of this scale requires significant amount of preliminary feasibility and preparation work involving stakeholder engagement, land negotiations, consultation and design work, all before delivery can take place. In the last 4 months, officers have been focused upon engaging with numerous landowners, including schools, towns and parishes, and other third parties to begin negotiations for large-scale planting schemes. In the meantime, smaller scale planting has taken place already on sites in Woos Hill Meadows, Shinfield St Mary's, Winnish Community Orchard and Chiltern Drive. To date, 5651, very precise, number of trees have been planted, and by March this year we're expecting to have planted a further 2,145 trees on a number of school sites in the borough. That's a fantastic start in a very short space of time. Now we are up and running. We will also be accepting applications for the Garden Forest Initiative as part of the tree planting project, whereby residents can apply to the council for a tree to plant in their gardens. We've received over 631 applications in the first round of the initiative, and the trees will be provided for residents to plant in October this year. Alongside the delivery of the 250,000 tree planting project, officers will always be working to develop the new tree strategy for the borough. The tree strategy will provide improved direction for the tree management and authority approach across the borough. It will help the borough to better understand the value of the WBC tree assets and provide guidance upon how planting schemes should be undertaken to optimise benefits for carbon sequestration, biodiversity in the local area. An early engagement survey took place in November 2021, last year, to gather input from stakeholders and residents about some of the key areas that could be covered within the strategy. This is to be used to assist with the preparation of the strategy following further public consultation on the draft strategy in 2022 this year. Executive will consider the adoption of the new tree strategy in early 2023.
Do you have a supplementary, Gary?
Yes, I do. That would appear to be about 10% of the numbers that's so far identified. With respect to the planting of trees, there seems to be no real plans to build many houses in the north of the borough, in particular Remenham and Hurst. Would it not be just a good idea to sign all the remaining trees there? So two problems solved. You get trees planted and no houses either, and I'd call that a win-win. Thank you.
Well, as you know, Gary, there are lots of things that you have to look at. That's why the scheme of this size is as you quite rightly say, is a massive scheme. And yeah, we're only at the start. I would say in answer to your question, it all depends on the ground conditions, because not all ground conditions will accept trees, so that it would have to be looked at and considered. But you also have to consider that the majority of that land wouldn't be in the council's ownership, so it would be down to the landowner.
Thank you, Gary. Clive, is Clive there? You were?
Yes, I'm here, John. Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Your question.
Yeah, my question is for John Kaiser. John, what will the effect on revenue costs be of cancelling the crematorium project over the next 5 years?
Thank you for your question, Clive. I mean, there was an indicative £110,000 net income in 22-23 and 219 in 23-24. When the and that was when the MTFP was agreed in February 21. As this scheme has now been deleted and it's been ruled out by viability, the income at the viability stage, the income line has now been deleted, along with £3.7 million worth of expenditure from 21-22 capital programme, which is 6 million over 2 years. The impact has already been factored into our budget setting work in formulating a balanced budget for 22-23, and as you will already know, it's been presented and considered by overview and scrutiny. Part of this impact obviously will help to reduce the need to borrow money.
Do you have a supplementary, Clive?
Yes, I do, please. Thank you very much for the answer, John. When the idea of a crematorium was first raised, it was meant to address the need for our residents to have more local cremations and have them in a reasonable time without having the delays often associated with Reading and East Hampstead. Has this need from our residents gone away?
Part of the viability was to look at whether or not it wasn't just about money, it was about whether or not the area could actually support another crematorium. And when we did the work and we looked at Bracknell, which owns the one, as you say, and we looked at the Reading one, an additional one wouldn't help with the numbers, because the reason that there's been delay at these crematorium is because of COVID. It's not because they don't have capacity. And once COVID, when it goes away is the wrong word, but once the COVID rules change significantly, they will be able to get back to business as usual and cope with the volume. All we would do is put additional volume, which would mean that we couldn't justify the utilisation for the viability. I very much would like to have built it if it could be justified financially, but we can't. It's just not, the money's just not there.
So you feel that the need has actually gone away, I guess, from your reply?
No, the need never goes away, Clive, because people always die. But I'm saying the need can be satisfied by the crematorium that we actually have around us.
Thank you, Clive. Maria Guy, your question to John Kaiser.
Yeah, thank you, Maria G. Oh, sorry, just find my question. Sorry about this. Yes, the capital monitoring report shows reprofiling to date of £244 million. What financial effect will this reprofiling have on the revenue costs required to manage these projects next year, in addition to those already planned for 2022-23?
Thank you, Maria, for your question. Over the past 2 years, the Council has seen some unprecedented levels of uncertainty due to COVID-19. This has had an impact in some areas on the capital programme, including the ability to resource materials and labour for some of the projects. However, we are still on track to invest £154 million this year in the community, as highlighted in the capital monitoring report. Alongside this, the Council has paused some programmes which will be considered in the future if viable business cases support these going ahead. You just heard of one, which was which basically we'll be looking at solar farms, for instance. Any impact on the revenue costs will be minimised, and where required, we will look to carry forward revenue budgets associated with these projects into future years. The Council continually monitors the impact of the Council's capital programme on borrowing costs and look to minimise these by borrowing when required as projects are delivered rather than ahead of need. The reprofiling of a capital programme is therefore wholly financially responsible and will enable schemes to be more appropriately delivered and will reduce unnecessary costs in the short term by passporting decisions and implementations into future years, both when service needs and the financial landscape will be more certain. And I would add, none of these reprofiling has been at the expense of delivering services.
Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary, Maria?
I do. So the approved capital budget for the year 2021-22 is 204 million. As I've mentioned, the carry forward to future years is 244 million, which is 120% of the programme for this year. I appreciate that some of this year's projects have been delivered, but that must mean that some projects are more than a year behind. Can you agree that it would be better to plan for a more deliverable programme so that residents might have certainty about investment in their communities? For example, I see that the Montague Park community facility has been delayed yet again, and I would regard that as an investment in services. So I'd really like to know when it's going to be delivered. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't tell you when that one will be delivered, but if you want, I can write to you about that and explain why that's been delayed. We live in very uncertain times, and you would not expect this council to commit until we know where we're going, what's happening. I mean, constantly in the past, people have actually said that we've overborrowed. We've overborrowed. Well, we are now in a position whereby we feel we are not overborrowing. We never will overborrow, and we will make sure that our capital programme fits what's required at the time. We couldn't do it any other way. I mean, it's just financially prudent to do it that way. And of course, there are some changes going on with regards to the way that councils can borrow money and the way they invest money. That's out for consultation at the moment, and we don't know the outcome of that yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Stephen Conway.
Thank you, John. I'm not quite sure whether my question comes under the category of known unknowns or unknown unknowns, but it's directed at John Kaiser again. Sorry, you've got so many questions, John. And my question, like Maria's, relates to the capital budget monitoring report. The first recommendation in that report states that there will be no financial impact from the reprofiling of budgets into 2022-23. As we've heard from several people this evening, we live in inflationary times. Factors beyond the council's control have led to significant inflation in costs since the budget was originally set. Given that progress on projects such as Twyford's new library has been delayed by these inflationary pressures, may I ask whether recommendation 1 takes full account of inflation, current and projected?
Thank you. Really, your question is very helpful because it indicates that there are uncertainties. And over the past 2 years, the council has seen an unprecedented level of uncertainty due to COVID-19. And in response to this, we have introduced a strengthening of our approach, which includes the reprofiling of spend into future years. Globally, inflation is an issue and will have an impact on the capital programme, on the council's capital programme, as presented to the overview and scrutiny as part of the budget submission in 22-23. We have looked to mitigate this through introducing a £12 million of central contingency for capital costs uplift pressures over the next 3 years. Within the capital programme, projects also have allowances for a level of price inflation built into the budget, which was always the case. The capital programme will continue to be monitored closely with continuing reporting to the executive and recommendations to make modifications where needed. This is part of our ongoing strengthening in the final management arrangements required in such times of uncertainty. I would just say that I will not hesitate if I feel that the finances of the council's going off course. I will not hesitate to bring the numbers back, look at the numbers again, because we have seen some massive increases, especially around labour and materials. Now, we're not sure whether those increases are short-term or whether they're long-term, but we will be looking at it again, I expect, halfway through the year. Thank you, Stephen.
Do you have a supplementary?
I do. Thank you for your answer, John. That was helpful. More or less what I expected and hoped to hear. I noticed in Appendix B of the report, the Capital Budget Monitoring Report, the delivery of the new Twyford Library is now to be delayed until the financial year 2022-23. That's not entirely a surprise to me, but the delay, I'm sure you'll be aware, will be very disappointing to many people in the northern parishes who've been eagerly awaiting this long-promised new library. Can you give me a more precise indication of when in the financial year 2022-23 structural work on the building will commence and when the project will finally be delivered?
Stephen, it's very difficult for me at this moment in time to give you a commitment to that, and I wouldn't want to tell you something that we couldn't meet. We have lots of other things going on at the moment. I understand how important this is and how it was promised in times pre-COVID. It was definitely on the agenda to deliver. But we have challenges around buses, we have challenges around bulge classes at schools, and all those things need additional funding. And in your neck of the woods, as you probably know, that you have schools, secondary schools, crying out for additional facilities. Now, we have to balance all those things, Stephen, and so it's really difficult. And I couldn't answer the same question if I was posed on any project that we've got going on at the moment, to be honest with you.
Thank you very much for that. But could I perhaps meet with you sometime soon to discuss this in more detail?
Yes, I'm quite happy to do that, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the members' questions. So coming to business items tonight, John, Revenue Budget Monitoring Report.
Thank you. I would just like to say a few words. I mean, we've heard about uncertainty. I mean, I am happy to say that I'm proud that we've worked to minimise the impact of COVID on residents in the borough. And historically, housing waiting lists were low, with the number of people with real need being matched by the number of affordable homes that we've built and delivered over the last few years. But during COVID, this has seen a worrying increase in demand for homes people can afford. Unfortunately, due to the high cost of housing, rents in the borough, what used to be affordable is getting further and further out of the reach of people on lower incomes. This means the only solution is to deliver more social housing. And this is an area where the council will continue to strive to deliver more homes to meet this need, with resources available to it via the HRA, the Housing Revenue Account. What has further complicated the delivery of social homes is the rise in labour and material costs, so making delivery of social housing only possible on council-owned land, which includes regeneration of brownfield sites or assets in the council control. I just wanted to talk a bit more about COVID and the impact over the last 24 months. And it's been very difficult to ascertain the long-term problems it may leave us with, but we are beginning to see some of these now. But rest assured, we're dealing with any short-term issues, and which we have they arise, and hopefully we should help residents avoid any long-term impact. I will continue to work with officers and members from all political parties and staff of the council to eradicate true poverty and protect the services in the borough and look to improve the lifestyle of the most vulnerable. This includes other areas such as expanding council tax discount where possible. We have no rough sleepers on the street by choice. 40 we have helped during the COVID pandemic, and we only have 11 who are currently in temporary accommodation. These are very difficult people to home and find places to live in the community. And I'm told we're being used now as a model for other councils. And it should be beholden of us to ensure that we continue in these efforts. The policy of the administration is not just to ensure people have somewhere to live, but reflect the fact that people are living in one of the best places in the UK and allow them to enjoy the benefits of living in Wokingham to the full. As an indication of our commitment, if you look at the percentage of our social housing stock that meets decent home standards, it's always around 100%. Poverty and inequality have no place in our borough, and we will do all that's possible to eradicate it where it's found. Facts and figures are bandied about how well council cope with housing issues, but one person homeless is one person too many. And I say, if you're homeless, you're 100% homeless. Now more than ever, with increasing gas prices, electricity, fuel inflation running at 5%, it means more people will be feeling the cold chill of poverty. Now more than ever, with COVID pandemic causing an unprecedented downturn in incomes. And Wokingham Borough must continually review to offered support offered to families in crisis. This involves keeping under review the effectiveness of our local welfare provision scheme, ensuring ongoing consultation with residents and the voluntary sector to ascertain how those who need crisis assistance can be fully supported. We ensure residents in need of support can easily access the schemes we have, and all the barriers are removed, and making sure it's effectively signposted to all people are signposted to all council support schemes, and the staff understand that there are cross-council support schemes and grants available. We need to ensure assistance is provided as quickly as possible after applications are received, and it goes without saying, schemes and grants are continued to be administered in the way we always have, which is with dignity and respect throughout the process, because there will be those who this is a new experience to, who have never reached out for help before. With limited resources and greater demand on services, it's important every penny of the residents' money we spend has a maximum impact in helping residents and providing services, especially during this post-COVID recovery phase. Now I will move on to the money that we've spent and reporting on that. So if we could go to page number 27. I don't intend to go through these in any detail because the papers and the questions can be asked. You can go through the papers and you can ask the questions. But I just would say that we are on course. We are on course, and if you look at our revenue budget, bearing in mind the revenue budget is nearly £150 million at £148 million, we have overspent by £523,000. That's the forecast. Now, 500, I don't know what that is as a percentage. I'm not an accountant, so I can't work it out. But only 135% of that was normal running costs. The other £388,000 of that was the cost for COVID. So I think hitting that target during this last year has been quite an achievement by the officers. And I'm quite happy to answer any questions on that paper if anybody wants to ask any.
Charles?
John, I just wanted to echo your comments. I know the department for which I'm responsible has been under huge pressure due to COVID and has been trying to work hard to actually do the key things that we're meant to do in terms of the COVID response, and also trying to keep the ship afloat, basically, and moving forwards with normal pressures. So I just wanted to take this moment to echo your comments and thank the officers for whom I work for not only responding to the COVID emergency, but also managing to pretty much bring us in on budget despite the huge overspend during the first lockdown. So thank you.
Can I just reiterate that the council during the last 2 years have been full of stars. You've got more than your fair share of stars in your adult care area.
John, I'd just like to echo Charles's thoughts as well. I think to be overspent by £523,000 on a budget of 147 million under the conditions and the pressures that we've had over the last year, I think is an absolutely phenomenal result. And to answer your question, it's 0.35%.
Thank you.
I would also like to add my words to the remarkable job that Susan Graham have done over the last 2 years. It has not been easy, and we are very lucky to have them and the finance team and the other team of officers. So my heartfelt thanks to them.
Thank you. I'd just like to, if you'd like to read the recommendations of the paper, which is note the financial impact of COVID, as illustrated in the executive summary. Note the overall forecast current to the general fund budget, the housing revenue account, which again is in the housing revenue account is £1.2 million worth of reserves. And the collection rate is council rent is over 99%, which again is fantastic, and is really a testament to it's a testament to the officers and the way that they dealt with people, but it also means that we have been helping people through this time of problem. Anyway, back to this. Sorry, there's a dedicated school grant which goes up every single year, making sure that more the high needs, because everybody recognises it's not correctly funded, even the government, and to approve a separately estimate for £110,000. Now that's £55,000 over 2 years for additional support for the arts and culture. We do not live by bread alone. So I recommend this for approval. Thank you.
Could I say a few words about the arts and culture strategy? We have a lively group. We're trying to achieve lots in the arts and culture ambience in the borough. We are a very, very lively borough. We're doing lots and lots of good things, and to put it all together in a way that we need somebody to support the arts and culture, and particularly the arts for Wokingham team. So if I would lend my support to that suggestion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. John, capital monitoring report.
Thank you very much. The capital monitoring report, you've heard some questions about rephasing tonight. It would be even worse than being careless if we didn't look at this on a very regular basis. And we constantly are looking at a way we can save money. And as we've seen, it is quite possible we're going to have to find in the future some additional quite heavy funds for some of the schools because of the additional children that we've got. And of course, that means that being one of the major priorities of the borough, there are some of the other more nice to do capital programs that we will actually rephase and where they can be put off to the future. Our forecast is the working at the moment. Our forecast is it looks like is about 155 million. We're going to come in about £8 million under our original forecast at the beginning of the year. We are borrowing less. We're not delivering as much, but you wouldn't expect us to during COVID. You can't get the materials, the construction, the labour, all the things, and of course, trying to get anybody to do anything of any magnitude is very difficult. We were lucky that we'd engaged all the people at the town centre before COVID really hit, and they were committed to, and that's a good thing. And I'm sure Stuart will tell you that we are motoring on well with that, and we are still getting people signing contracts. So again, I mean, I would just ask for you to approve, note the proposal, the rephasing, note the position of the capital programme at the end of Q3, and to summarise, as summarised in the report, and approve and note the removal of the new crematorium scheme for the capital programme, and the removal of it because it does, as I say, it does not make commercial sense, and it doesn't make sense in that we have capacity within the borough using our two neighbours' crematorium. Any questions?
Any questions? No, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. John, again, Chief Financial Officer's report, page 51.
Thank you. I feel a bit of a fraud presenting this because it's not mine. It's the Chief Financial Officer's, Graham Ebers. And I would say, please read it. It is a blueprint for other councils that aren't too far away from us. Maybe if they had read it, they wouldn't be in the same problems that they've got currently. It is an excellent piece of work. It makes an awful lot of sense. It's even to me, being a layman, especially as we are still the lowest funded authority, unitary authority in the country. What we do with our money seems to be quite a bit more than quite a lot of other councils do. I would just say one thing which is really important. If you go through this, you will find a report that actually talks about the annual budget changes, pressures, service and efficiencies. Not a very snappy name, but Graham's not good with snappy names. But if you look at that, that is £16 million. £16 million. Now, to be honest with you, we've had an additional £1.8 million from the government this year. So it just goes to the challenge that we've got going forward. We're looking to save efficiencies of £5 million next year. Again, that's going to be challenging, bearing in mind we've probably saved in the last 5 to 6 years £30 million in real terms. Again, I recommend this report. I'm sure everybody's read it. So, if you'd like to vote for it.
Any questions, Charles?
Thank you, John. Oops. I was just going to pick up the point in the major financial risks forward look, which relates to adult social care reform, which obviously the figures in which are reflected in here are known, and I thought it would be worth mentioning briefly what we've been trying to do about it, because we're trying to be proactive and get involved and try and raise this issue with people who it needs raising with. And with the support of the leader and Councillor Cunnington, we've been liaising with other Berkshire councils, basically trying to encourage them to look at their figures and the impact. And West Berkshire and RBWM face similar figures to us. Myself and the lead member in my role for RBWM have written to Sajid Javid, trying to raise this, and we'll continue trying to be proactive, raise awareness of this. So, because the bottom line is, whilst these reforms are very welcome in terms of an attempt to look at social care, there's not currently enough funding on a national issue. And we'd be letting down our residents, in my opinion, if we didn't try and flag up these threats, basically, and get somebody to do something about them. Otherwise, I support what John Kaiser has said, basically, and no further comments.
Can I just respond to that, Charles? I mean, say, bearing in mind the service that you give in adult, or Matt gives in adult care, and your increasing demand, and there's some sort of alchemy going on in that department, and I don't know what it is, but just keep doing it.
John, on page 65, there is a table that talks about the net annual benefit. And it talks about if it's divided by the council tax base of number of Band D equivalent properties. There is a benefit per Band D property of £42.70 in 22-23, £55.21, 22-23, and £62.47 in 24-25. Could you just clarify for me that is actually a net benefit that is being made from our generated income through assets, and just confirm that those numbers are actually generated from our assets and investments?
Yes, they do. They also come from our investments as well, correctly, but with interest rates being as low as they are. I think the really important thing about these numbers is that we are the lowest funded, grant funded authority, unitary authority in the country. So all our money comes from our residents. Very little money comes from the government in the way of grants, unlike an awful lot of other councils up and down the country. So this is real money for us. This is real money on this, as it says here, for every tax pack we're getting, it's another 42.70, rising to 62.47 over the plan period. It's really important to us. Without it, some of the services that the residents have got used to, they wouldn't get. It's as simple as that.
Well, I have to say, John, that considering that in our settlement funding, we get £81.20 in Wokingham, West Berks get £114 per resident, and Bracknell Forest get £115. On behalf of everybody that is receiving a benefit from our investments, thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask a few questions, John? In the figures of a net annual benefit, is it correct that we receive some 65 million in business rates, and we retain only 15 million and give the rest to the government?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that is exactly the situation. And that's all to do with the way the calculations worked out, because we're considered to be prosperous. It doesn't mean anything we do is any cheaper. In fact, it's probably a lot more expensive, because salaries are more expensive, housing's more expensive, property's more expensive. So it doesn't really work.
So we're in that context not only the lowest funded, but also probably giving the highest level of funding to the government.
Yes.
Some 18 months ago, there was a lot of discussion about our net indebtedness rising to 750 million, which was headlined in all the press. The table on page 64 suggests otherwise. What is our current net indebtedness now, and what do you expect it to be at the end of next financial year?
Now, our current net indebtedness is forecast to be 177 million pounds, and that will rise. That's rising to 300 million pound, as you can see by the graph, and then it starts to tail off.
That's considerably different from the 750 million that was suggested.
Yes, we've never. I mean, I hasten to add, I think that somebody misread a graph somewhere, because the actual 700 million pounds was our capital programme, and as we never spend the capital programme, okay, we probably spend 60% of it in a good year. At the moment, we're not even spending that, but that was the total capital programme. And of course, an awful lot of our capital programme does get funded by grants. We have grants for roads, we have grants for some of the stuff we do. And so it isn't all about borrowing. And of course, we also fund a lot of stuff from our own resources. Bearing in mind that we're borrowing money to put in infrastructure, there seems to be, people seem to think that if we build more houses, we get more money. No, we don't. It costs us money to build more houses because we have to forward fund infrastructure. And the only way we can forward fund infrastructure is if we borrow money. OK, but could you imagine development without the infrastructure?
So this report, Finance Officer's report, is generally very positive. So why is the leadership of the council, you and I, so gloomy?
I always like to know who's lurking around the corner, John. I do not know that at the moment.
Any other questions? Any other questions? No, those in favour of the recommendation. Thank you, carried unanimously. Could John, myself and Charles leave the room, please?
I'm covering the next item, the Optilis contract renewal. Just a bit of background before we go into the recommendation and what's work's got into this 50-page document. 3 years ago, Optilis was exclusively focused on growth. WBC decided it should focus only on quality and value. So that was a bit of a change of direction. 2 years of negotiations have led to 2.5 million being returned to WBC. The company's restructuring 3 boards of directors were reduced to 1. They're a more flexible, agile company. WBC operations separated from the overall company. This means we can focus the service that we want for Wokingham. A revised shareholder agreement giving each side the right to exit is also agreed. A refocus of the entire company on quality. Very important, I think, in this area. So in general, this gives WBC the ability to use Optilis as a provider to hedge against rising variable care costs from other providers and to develop new services to suit our needs. What is being requested here is that the recommendation is that the executive commends to council to approve the attached procurement business case to renew the contract to Optilis, delegate authority to the Director of Adults Services in conjunction with the lead member for Adult Services to A, approve and complete the contract with Optilis for 7.3 million for 2022-23, and to undertake all activities required to complete the joint ownership arrangement between Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead and WBC Council set out in the heading Future Arrangements below. Thirdly, delegates jointly to the Director of Adult Services and to the Director of Resources and Assets authority to add and remove services within Optilis during the term of the contract, provided that in each case up to the total of 500,000. A, the budget for the cost of the services has already been approved as part of the agreed council budget. B, the business case has been approved by both directors. And C, the executive member responsible for adult services and the executive member responsible for finance have been consulted. And 4, to note that new shareholders agreement. Happy to take any questions. If there are any, but fairly straightforward. No questions? All in favour? And that's unanimous thoughts here too.
So, Wayne, the Ruskin Neighbourhood Development Plan.
Yeah, you've seen many of these before. It's really to ask your permission this evening, recommendation to approve a 6-week consultation of the Ruskin Neighbourhood Plan and agree to appoint an examiner to independently examine the Ruskin Neighbourhood Plan, delegating the authority and appointment and the submission of the examination documentation to the Director of Place and Growth in consultation with myself. Any questions?
Any questions from anybody? Those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Last item, I believe, the leisure strategy. Parry.
Thank you, John. The strategy sets out plans to support residents' physical and emotional well-being through the council's own leisure offerings, which are extensive, and through effective partnership with a wide range of other organisations. The strategy outlines 4 key priorities, and these are promoting health and well-being of our residents, raising participation and reducing levels of inactivity, maintain and extend accessibility to indoor leisure services, and maintain and extend accessibility to outdoor spaces. If you remember, Mr. Chairman, that we last year approved the leisure strategy, but we also approved the consultation that went out between April and July last year. And the main areas of feedback from our residents was that they wanted to see more sports facilities and classes, more options for young people, more outdoor activities. In response to these feedback, we've been working with the Youth Council and community teams to develop new programs, facilities to encourage more young children and teenagers to get very active. And these will be incorporated into the council's well-established and successful facilities, including 6 leisure centres, 3G and grass pitches, the boxing gym, which was recently commissioned, tennis parks and open spaces, as well as the vast number of sporting clubs. We would also target sessions for the borough's Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. The council will review its current programme of activities and identify sessions which are popular with these communities to encourage more residents to get involved and get physically active. And lastly, more targeted sessions for older people. The extensive programmes the council currently offers older residents will be expanded, and these include Shine, this is for the classes for the over 60s, active ageing sessions offering seated and music-based exercises, dementia sessions, dedicated music to movement classes in care homes, and assisted living sites, health walks, range and prevention of programs to council, leisure facilities and community sessions, and continued joint working with the local working volunteer groups. So, Mr. Chairman, Wokingham Borough is an excellent place to live with high quality of life, and we are very aware that the quality of our leisure offers plays a significant role in enhancing well-being and enriching the lives of our residents. There are very significant health benefits for everyone, from the very young to the very old. It helps to raise achievements in schools, enables health care and for those with long-term conditions, and helps to prevent mental and physical illnesses. Just as lastly, I would just want to mention some about Pinewood. In addition to the key leisure partners above, Wokingham Borough has the benefit of a strong sports and leisure community at Pinewood. The relationships with these organisations are considered important in developing our leisure offerings going forward, and there is a commitment to develop these valued facilities in the forthcoming future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to take questions, and there are recommendations on page 187, which I'll read out a minute after the questions.
So, Parry, we are allegedly the healthiest place to live in the country. What would you put that down to?
As you can, we offer the leisure facilities, which is probably the best in the country, and all our healthy residents take advantage of these facilities, and that is the main reason for their health and well-being.
The Working Integrated Partnership is very praiseworthy of our leisure strategy for our older people. Do you think that that's working as it should do?
I think it's working reasonably well, John. We have got an extensive range of programs, particularly for the elderly that I've just read out, and the Shine program is working very, very well with active classes for the over 60s. And we're doing very, very, very well.
Questions?
I'm glad to see you mention town and parishes there in the partnership delivery on page 201. Obviously, we now find town and parishes are in a position where they can become partners. So they've got money, they get SIL. Some of them get 25%, some of them get 15%, but they're large amounts of money. And we could work with those parish and councils to help them and work and match fund in some cases in better times to try and deliver better services on things that they run or help them implement new stuff. So I think that's really important. Thank you, John.
Any other questions, Parry? No. Those in favour of the leisure strategy and the recommendations contained in it? Thank you. Carried unanimously. When I said it was the last item, I didn't mean it was the last item. It was the last item on the page. We have two other items. Page 225, whole council elections. I think that's me. We've discussed tonight that we should be entering a period when our finances will be stretched. What we know is that adult health and social care bill will cost some 27 million. We are likely to lose the new homes bonus of some 4 million. We'll probably have to settle a negative dedicated schools grant of 10 million, increasing at 3 million annually. Our buses are under financial pressure, and that is the over and above the internal inflationary pressure of the cost increases, the NI rises, and the substantial energy costs. Together, they represent more than 50 million of increases when our total council tax revenues is 125 million. Being the lowest funded council in England is a mixed blessing. We are the lowest because we have the least deprivation, but being the lowest, we cannot expect much financial sympathy from whatever the hue of government is in Whitehall. So the adverse impact we shall have to face with either cost reduction or increases in third-party income. It is in this environment that we're looking at for any savings which would enable us to protect our services. And these potential election changes look at potentially 4.5 million over a 4-year cycle, or more than £1 million per annum. They're too much money to just ignore. We have currently a boundary review taking place, which requires us to determine the electoral system we wish to use. What is on offer is thirds, an election every year, apart from the fourth, of 1/3 of the wards. All wards have to be 3 councillor wards. Or full council, an election every 4th year for all seats, which can be 1 councillor, 2 councillor or 3 councillor wards, reflecting communities, or all single councillor wards. What we cannot have is what we currently have, which is 1 councillor, 2 councillor wards, or 3 councillor wards, reflecting communities elected on different cycles, but on a 3-year cycle. The Boundary Commission argues that every resident should have an equal access to democracy. By that, they mean if you live in Arborfield, you get a vote once every 4 years. And if you live in Shinfield, every year. They want all voters to get an opportunity either to vote every year or every 4 years. Whatever we do, we shall have full council elections, all out in 2024. What we currently do is very expensive and highly disruptive and seems to be more and more of an outlier. Most councils have either moved to 4-year elections or are moving to them. We just cannot waste such large sums of council money and residents' money, particularly at this time. MPs are elected with a maximum of 5 years, PCCs 4 years, parish and town councils every 4 years, mayors every 4 years. We're generally an outlier now. The process requires a consultation of residents, which is what we are considering tonight. If the consultation suggests we should change, then a special council meeting will be held, whereas 2/3 majority will be required to change the electoral system of thirds to full council. This will be after the May elections. So I emphasise we're not discussing tonight a change of electoral system. We're discussing a consultation for a change, which will, if we agree tonight to do so, we'll have to go for agreement to council in February. I believe it's February. So, questions? No? Are you all happy? Yep. So unanimously. So the last item, which is Wayne, the Central East Berkshire Joint Minerals and Waste Plan, main modifications consultation.
Yep, as you know, last September, October, we had our examination in public in Maidenhead, and there were a number of modifications. So what this paper is addressing, and I'm looking for your support to agree the main modifications and the supporting documentation for the public consultation. Don't forget there are no sites in Wokingham Borough in this plan. Authorise the community engagement plan, which will be at least 6 weeks from February this year, and authorise the Director of Place and Growth in consultation with me to agree minor amendments necessary to the plan and the main modifications and the supporting documents prior to the consultation. Any questions?
Wayne, can you just confirm that there are no sites in the borough, and that the Facebook chatter, which says that there will be one in Swallowfield or wherever it is in the west of the borough, is being considered?
No, there's no sites in this plan. I see on Facebook chatter, we see a lot of stuff on there, but you know, sometimes true facts get in the way of a good story, don't they?
So we can confirm that
Yeah,
there are
there's
no sites in the borough.
I'm not aware, unless somebody's got some information that I don't know about, there's no sites in this plan in Woking Borough,
Any other questions?
unless it's another Facebook myth.
I think it might be fake news, but
Yeah, well, there's a lot of that.
it's important to officially confirm that that's not the case. All those in favour? All those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much for attending the meeting. Thank you very much for attending from home. This concludes the business of the evening. Thank you very much.